When people talk about the best games ever made, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is never far away from that conversation. Now, I played through this game when it first came out. I've now gone back to it recently to see if it holds up, and I'm happy to report it's still magical, full of wonder, secrets to uncover and great characters, and it's still an absolute gem of a game. One of my favourite Legend of Zelda games in the series. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past originally released in 1991. I still remember playing through this game with my childhood friend Jamie at his house one summer. Now, I believe the game released in Japan first and then came out in the US and Europe later, but Jamie had a Super Famicom and we could play SCART US imports. It was a great summer, two Legend of Zelda fans playing through this brand new adventure in Hyrule. This was a huge step up from the Zeldas we played through before on the NES. It was different and we knew we were about to embark on a great journey. A Link to the Past was the game that would almost be the template for great Zelda games until Link broke into the 3D realm with Ocarina of Time. Link's Awakening, The Minish Cap, A Link Between Worlds, Spirit Tracks, among others, would all try to capture what made A Link to the Past great. Having played through A Link to the Past in the last couple of weeks, I think it's fair to say these games, while good in their own right, never really matched up to the great heights they reached in A Link to the Past. I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan, I'm probably biased towards the series, but today I want to try and describe why I like it and why it's had such a profound impact on my gaming history, and why to this day I eagerly await the next Legend of Zelda game. And at the time of making this review, we're just under 200 days away from Tears of the Kingdom for Nintendo Switch. It's the sense of adventure, the weapons, exploring Hyrule, the dungeons, secrets, plus also A Link to the Past has something many Zelda games don't have. That is the light world and the dark world. Well, first of all, I want to talk about the weapons. So here we have an array of weaponry. Many classics are introduced. Link's inventory for A Link to the Past is huge when compared to previous Zelda games. So we start out with a simple lamp, and then we get our first sword and shield pretty early on in Hyrule Castle. And as we progress through the game and the dungeons, we gather loads more items. We've got bow and arrows, the hookshot, bombs, the magic hammer, various medallions that act as attack techniques, often destroying everything on the screen, but also allow us entry into the later dungeons. We got the ice rod and the fire rod, meaning Link has a wide variety of attacking options in the game. Something that is missing from Breath of the Wild are the unique items in the dungeons. I know that Breath of the Wild was the series' attempt at switching up the formula, because the Zelda audience had grown tired of the series' traditions, including items, dungeons, and a linear path through the game. A Link to the Past represents the start of this journey, ultimately where it ended with Skyward Sword. So while the formula changed somewhat when we went into the 3D realm with Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda stayed true to the formula perfected in A Link to the Past. The items also make the world feel alive and magical. We've got Zora's flippers that we acquire from King Zora, albeit for a mighty price of rupees. Classic items like the Power Glove or upgraded Titan's Mitt allow us to pick up heavy objects and remove them from our path. We've got the Pegasus Boots, probably the best item in the game, allowing us to traverse the environment nice and quickly. We've got the Mirror Shield, the red and blue armor upgrades, and also loads more too. The Magic Powder is an item I remember being totally mesmerized as by a kid. You can sprinkle some magic dust on something and it will turn into something else. I didn't realise back then this was a useful tactic for creating fairies in dungeons, but you live and learn. So it's good to know this old dog can still learn some new tricks in a 30-year-old Zelda game. The items are useful for getting around Hyrule itself, but there's also some great lore in there too. So Getting the Flute is a particularly heartbreaking story. We have to travel to and from the Dark World, talking to a character who once played the flute. So it's buried underground, you're given a shovel to dig it up. You're asked to play a song one last time before he fades away into the background. There's another similar story of reuniting the two blacksmith brothers who temper your sword, as well as playing the flute in Kakariko Village, freeing a bird from inside the statue. Now, the items are useful to Link's adventure in the game, but they also come with memorable story moments as well. Hyrule is larger this time, when compared to the two NES games that came before it. You've got Death Mountain, the swamp, the desert, Lake Hylia and the Lost Woods, all classic locations you'd expect to be in a Legend of Zelda adventure. The Lost Woods in particular are a delight, shrouded in mist and fog, when you finally find your way through the opening chapter of the game You pick up the Master Sword. I love the music, the cute little animals running from side to side to greet you, and also your Master Sword prize. Now, at this point, it's probably worth talking about the structure of A Link to the Past. It's got one of the best opening sequences to a game ever. Link starting out in bed, Zelda visiting him in a dream. She says she's trapped in Hyrule Castle with an evil wizard about to kill her. Link then sets off on an adventure to save Zelda from the wizard. Before she's whisked away once again, your first job is to collect 3 pendants. Once you do this, you can then collect the Master Sword, and then the whole world changes and we're introduced to the Dark World. You know, the hairs on my arms stand up when I start to think about that first moment going into the Dark World. You find a portal on the top of Death Mountain, step in, and everything changes. Suddenly, you aren't Link anymore, you're a creature in a bunny mask. In a strange world where suddenly everything hits harder, does more damage. At that moment we first see the Dark World is up there with getting the Master Sword, and that opening sequence going into Hyrule Castle in the rain, all iconic scenes from A Link to the Past. From the moment to getting into the Dark World, then you have to save 7 maidens, complete the dungeons, beat the bosses, and then finally face off against Aghanim and Ganon. The dungeons of the game start simple and incrementally get more difficult over time. We're introduced to a new dungeon mechanic like crystal switching, tiles on the floor and holes in the floor to fall through to new areas. Standard formula for a dungeon is enter, find the keys, the map, the compass and the big key, then also find the dungeon item, then use that item to help solve the puzzles, and then defeat the boss. The bosses range from fairly simple to some were downright impossible. If it wasn't for a few strategically saved fairies in bottles, I wouldn't be here telling you this story. The dungeons are creative, the bosses are tough, but not overly obtuse. Each dungeon took around an hour, or maybe just over an hour, and I never really felt stuck. Switching up the standard formula later in the game is a dungeon where you have to save a maiden roughly halfway through, and have to bomb open a hole in the floor to let the sun shine through, and when that sunlight hits the maiden she turns into the dungeon boss. It's an absolute spectacle and one of many in the game. Another aspect of A Link to the Past I love are the secrets. So you've got hidden fairy fountains across Hyrule, where you can throw weapons or items into the pond, and you're going to get upgraded versions. For example, you could throw in your shield for an upgraded fire shield. Then again later you do this in the Dark World to get the silver arrows and the golden sword, 2 crucial items for defeating Ganon at the end of the game. So I love things like finding the mushroom in the forest, taking it to the witch to trade for the magic powder, all the cracks in the walls where Link can place bombs. At one point there's a huge crack which cannot be opened by anything short of a super bomb. It's really satisfying. This is not as obtuse as the first Legend of Zelda game. That dropped you into the world, didn't tell you anything, and Nintendo were like, off you go young one. At least here in A Link to the Past you got cracks on the wall to signify there's something there. A Link to the Past builds on the first 2 Legend of Zelda games, takes what is great about them both and combines them. Nintendo quickly reverted back from the 2D side-scrolling adventure of Link, although it retained the magic meter, some of the sword fighting mechanics, and also some of the items. A Link to the Past takes advantage of the power of the SNES, more complex sprites, great music, more complex enemy AI, and also more enemies on screen. There's so many elements here that would go on to become the Zelda formula. The music here in the game are where many of the staple Zelda tunes got their start. The formula for finding items in dungeons, using those items, that would stay with the Legend of Zelda series for years. Another element I love about A Link to the Past are the communities that have spawned around it. The speedrunning community, the randomizer community, both are really welcoming and they're really happy that you're playing the game and joining in the community activities. Both features are something I'd love to see Nintendo embrace, but they haven't so far, and it really seems like a missed opportunity. So I do want to shout out to the speedrunning community and also the randomizer community. Really appreciate your work. Overall, A Link to the Past is a classic game and one that still feels great in the modern day. Many games are trying to emulate the greatness of A Link to the Past. Few live up to it, even few of the Zelda series itself. So if you play Breath of the Wild or Skyward Sword and you're interested in the Legend of Zelda, I couldn't recommend A Link to the Past more to find out where the Zelda formula was perfected. So it may have been spawned in the original Legend of Zelda, but it was perfected here in A Link to the Past. Plus there's so much more to enjoy. Well, the game was developed by Nintendo, it's published by Nintendo, it's available on the SNES, also Nintendo Switch Online. It was released on the 21st of November 1991. Well, that is it for my review of A Link to the Past. Really enjoyed playing it through as an adult, as the first time round I played it as a kid. So it's just as magical as when I played it the first time, and I can't recommend it enough to go back and play it for yourself. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. For more Legend of Zelda content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to Triforce Times. Or you can check me out on Twitter at Triforce Times. Well, if you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Well, thanks again. I'll see you soon.